We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome to this week's get-together where we are going from good coaches to great coaches. And for those of you new to the game, from new coaches to good coaches as efficiently and effectively as possible. Baseball season is in the air. And in this episode, we are going to talk about what we should fix first with our pitchers so they're less likely to get hurt and they're more likely to throw strikes. So we'll dive into that. I am super pumped up to be on a new microphone. I've had bad luck with microphones. The first microphone I started with back in 2019 when our first episode came out was a Yeti Blue. Yeti's a really well-known, very respected brand. And if you go on Amazon, you'll see it's 4.7 stars with thousands and thousands of reviews. And that one went kaput on me after like a year. I think it had something to do with switching to the Apple Silicon, was unusable after that. Then I used a couple different microphones after that had really great reviews, but not the quality that I want to bring each week to all of you. So I'm pumped up, got this new microphone, and I'm hoping that from here forward, the audio is super crisp and super clean. So we shall see. And something that had me super pumped up also was an email I received from Dead Legends. Some of you probably familiar with this. It's an email newsletter, baseball email newsletter, shares really cool stories. Many of them have interesting twists and turns, but it's a short read, fun to get. Dead Legends, recommend it. It's not going to teach you how to coach baseball, but for those of you that are baseball buffs or want to know a little bit more behind the scenes of some of your favorite old-time players, it's a good read. So last week, of course, we talked about bunting for a base hit, among a couple other things. We talked about goals for bunting for a base hit and when a good time to bunt for a base hit is. And then by bunting for base hits, typically it's the third baseman coming in. It's even better if the other coach brings in more players, which then in turn increases our chances of getting hits when we swing away. And so one of the emails that came from Dead Legends this week talked about the 1910 batting championship, the batting crown between the famous Ty Cobb and Napoleon Lajoie, who said the French didn't like baseball. Now, Napoleon, also known as Nap, you might have heard it pronounced as LaJoie, but it's Lajoie or something to that effect. Anyways, the batting crown came down to those two. We'll just stick with the Nap for short because that's a sweet name. So Nap needed essentially to go 9 for 9 or 10 for 10 in a doubleheader on the last day of the season to win the batting crown. And Nap went 8 for 8. And guess how he got all 8 hits? Yep, base hit bunts. Now you might be thinking, how in the heck did he go 8 for 8 bunting for base hits? Didn't the other team figure it out after the second or third bunt? They were giving it to him. They were playing their third baseman back because allegedly they did not like Ty Cobb. In fact, Nap's team, he played for Cleveland, closed out the season with a doubleheader against the St. Louis Browns. And the Browns manager, Jack O'Connor, hated Ty Cobb. And he instructed his third baseman, first name Red, his third baseman, he said, "Hey, Red, I want you to play deep all day so that any bunt Nap puts down the third base line would result in a hit." And that's exactly what Lajoie did. So Nap, 8 for 8. I stand corrected if I said all 8 of those hits were bunts. 7 of those hits were bunts, according to the Dead Legends article. So last week, I was telling you how a default expectation for the teams I coach, outside of a few caveats, with less than 2 strikes, if that third baseman plays back, they're expected to put down a bunt down the third base line. If the third baseman is playing back, he's giving you that. Hitting is not easy, and he's giving you the closest, shortest means to a base hit. Bunt the ball 30 feet, far enough away from the catcher. Don't bunt it back to the pitcher, of course. We're using the foul line. The rule for your bunters, your hitters, should be that if it's not a base hit, it should be a foul ball versus the pitcher fielding it or the catcher fielding it. In fact, we'd rather as coaches have our player bunt it too hard to third base than back to the pitcher or straight down and have the catcher step forward a few steps and pick it up and throw them out. So, in a major league game for the batting title, the opposing coach hated Ty Cobb allegedly and told his third baseman to play deep. So, Knapp bunted 7 times for base hits in a doubleheader simply because the third baseman was playing back. I want to mention one last thing. Bunting for a base hit when the third baseman is playing deep is predicated on the fact that we've been repping the bunts in batting practice. Core part of our batting practice, not the majority, and maybe not even the super majority part of our batting practice, but for some of your hitters that have never played baseball or are new to baseball or who haven't got a hit since 2 years ago, those hitters should be repping a few more bunts in practice. There's no reason batting practice has to be exactly the same for everybody. It may be similar, but there's no reason we can't individualize it a little. You have a hitter who hits really well, hits a lot of doubles. Maybe he bunts 10% of his reps in batting practice for a base hit, while a newer player, somebody who struggles a lot, maybe he bunts a quarter of the reps in batting practice. So I thought that was good. Opened up that email and I go, we just talked about this on last week's podcast. Now, as I mentioned before, let's talk about fixing this first with our pitchers so they're less likely to get hurt and throw more strikes. Pitch counts is a good starting point, trying to reduce arm injuries. I think time off from throwing is important. ASMI is really big on their recommendation that pitchers, players, baseball players don't throw a baseball for 2 to 4 months every year. 2 to 4 because each kid's different, taking some rest from throwing, not just pitching, but from throwing. There are some other key factors like nutrition, and I'm not going to get into that right now, but I think nutrition's probably a big one because we all know our diets are not that great, or at least they're probably not nearly as good as they were 100 years ago. I think another thing is our muscles aren't being used as much at a young age. The kids nowadays aren't using their muscles as much. They're not working the farms. They're not building as much. They're not doing as much. So that strength that develops over time may not be there. So there's definitely more than just pitch counts, but that's good because that's kind of a hard cap. It's easy to count. It's an easy metric to follow. But the pitching delivery and utilizing the legs and making sure we dial in the legs, to me, is the biggest needle mover. Training the legs, getting the legs stronger, getting the legs more mobile, sturdier, more stable at release. And most importantly, the first thing we should teach up is getting their hips, the pitcher's hips and glutes out in front. When the pitcher starts striding down the mound, when they start going forward, they should lead with their butt, their hips, not their shoulder. If they're leading with the top half, that's a bad sign. Almost every single pitcher over the last 100 years that you would consider the most durable, I mean, Nolan Ryan, Satchel Paige, Roger Clemens, Greg Maddux, Mariano Rivera, even Pedro Martinez. He was pretty tiny, small frame, but stayed pretty durable. They all did an excellent job of getting the hips and glutes out in front. Go look up any of those pitchers. I like Mariano Rivera, Pedro, Roger Clemens, Nolan Ryan. You can go look up any of those guys and look up images of them pitching. You'll see their butt, their hips out in front, leading the way. Now, eventually the front foot for right-handers, that's the left leg, left foot. For left-handers, that's going to be the right leg, right foot. Eventually, that's got to come out in front, and they got to land and stabilize that front side, right? They got to land and finish their stride. But the initial half of that, riding the slide, as some coaches call it, or striding down the mound, the hips and the glutes should be leading the way. This utilizes mass, momentum, coming from the core, coming from the lower half through the core, and essentially the arm goes along for the ride rather than having to generate all the power or generate a lot of the power. The arm should not be generating that much of the power and the velocity, at least not as much as what I see very commonly these days from the youth level all the way to the pro level. I think we're going to find that the poor use of the lower half, starting with that first part that I talked about there, it's not so much how high their leg lift is, their leg kick, their knee lift. I just call it a leg lift. It's not so much how high that is, but what part of the body start going forward first? And then do pitchers stride straight? Pitchers should, for the most part, stride straight to the catcher's glove or home plate. They might be a little open, a little closed, a few inches. That's okay. Ideally, they stride straight to the target. Again, if it's a few inches closed or open here or there, that's not a big deal. But getting the hips and the glutes leading the way, striding straight, and then far enough, but not overextended. More often than not, nowadays, I see pitchers striding too short. I do see some pitchers overextended. A good example of an overextended pitcher would be like Roy Oswalt, great pitcher pitcher, a lot of fun to watch pitch. I think he was a little overextended, but for his body, it worked pretty well. He was very mobile and he could get away with it. He could do it. I think he could have been a 4 or 5 inches shorter on that stride. And you might think, well, that's not a big deal. That makes a big difference, just a few inches. But nevertheless, a lot of pitchers like Zach Gallen for the Diamondbacks, some of these pitchers I think are too short. And I'm using major league guys so you can go see them pitch. I try to use major league pitchers so they're examples that you can go check and see quickly. So those three things are what we should be working on first and foremost with our pitchers. Everybody talks about the lower half, the lower half. Yes, but what specifically? First, I think it's using the lower half and the center core or center mass to create some momentum to lead the way down the mound as gravity pulls the player forward. It's not so much pushing off the mound. It's not so much how much we can push off the mound that generates a lot of the power. Does it help? Yeah, but getting that center of mass out in front, pushing the butt and the hips forward. And again, just go watch a video of Pedro Martinez or Mariano Rivera, or any of those, Nolan Ryan, Roger Clemens. They lead with their hips and their glutes from the initial movement down the slope, down the mound. Now, couple that with hinging, having an effective hinge. I don't want to get too technical with that because I think the hinge will take care of itself insofar as we have good posture. We push those hips forward, our glutes forward. We stride out far enough. I think the sink on the back leg, the squat, the sit on the back leg, the hinge, I think that'll take care of itself for the most part. I don't think we need to over sink on that back leg. We definitely don't want to be stiff, straight-legged on the back leg. But those three things I think we should fix first. I'm a pitching coach by trade. I've trained thousands of pitchers. You got to go out there and start from the ground up when you're coaching your pitchers. They got to stride straight or relatively straight. They have to stride far enough, but not overextended. And before that even happens, they need to lead and get those hips and glutes pushed forward without leaning back. They shouldn't be leaning back. Their posture should stay pretty good while they do this. And I'm telling you, this will reduce so much stress on the arm and they'll throw more strikes. Believe it or not, I firmly believe that better pitching mechanics, a better pitching delivery, or more optimal pitching delivery for each pitcher will not only net more strikes, better accuracy, we should say, it will optimize their power, their arm strength, and it will also optimize their arm health. Again, we're not going to eliminate arm injuries and we're not going to get our guys to throw 100 miles an hour in Little League, but we can definitely get them better by doing these three things first and foremost and then going from there. Too many coaches are too worried about the grip and the release point and all that. And any coach that's out there that starts coaching the grip and the arm path, or the arm swing, as some coaches call it, or even the glove and the front side, they start going right into that. That's typically a big red flag. They're not an experienced pitching coach. Like the great book, the old late, great Fresno State coach, Bob Bennett, wrote, Pitching from the Ground Up. You got to start from the ground up. So fix that first with your pitchers. Next week, we are going to discuss how we can use a famous person's 5-step algorithm for improving our teams, our coaching methods. And we'll break down the 5 steps and I'll share some examples of how we can use this for coaching. So we'll talk about that next week. Head over to 8020baseball.com, articles, videos, the free drill design guide. Share the podcast with a friend. That would be greatly appreciated, much appreciated. And hope you all have a great rest of your week. It's always nice being here. Send me your emails. Let me know how you're doing. Send me your questions. Share your success stories. I love getting those. Get a lot of those and they never get old. All right, everybody. Until next week, let's take care of ourselves. Let's take care of our health so we can be there for our family, our close friends, and we can be the best coach that we can be. Let's take this information. Let's take it out to the field and let's put it into play. Y'all take care. Until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.